Is there a significant chance that this situation will come to an end soon? How do you personally perceive or truly feel about that particular prospect? Are we moving towards an end?
Back in 2022, we proposed to the Ukrainian authorities to respect the choice of the people living in southeastern Ukraine, to withdraw their troops from there, and to end this conflict immediately. And I must say that overall, this did not provoke complete rejection. But after we, at the insistent request of our Western European colleagues, withdrew our troops from Kyiv, the situation immediately changed, and we were told almost verbatim the following: "Now we will fight until either you break our necks or we break yours." I don't remember whether I've ever said this publicly or not, but that's more or less how it was phrased, only in even harsher terms, but quite openly and, oddly enough, almost in a comradely way. So now it's either us or you. And so this is all still ongoing. Still, it seems to me that if common sense, which involves practical and sound judgment, ultimately prevails and guides our collective decisions, it will indeed be entirely possible to reach a comprehensive and mutually agreeable resolution on an acceptable and sustainable way to effectively bring an end to this protracted and challenging conflict. This fundamental belief that rational thought and shared understanding will ultimately triumph is precisely the foundational premise and guiding principle from which I am currently operating and diligently working. Especially since we can see the mood of the current US administration under President Trump. We observe not just their earnest calls, but a profound and genuine desire to diligently find this viable solution, and I truly think this is a certain promising light at the very end of the tunnel. We will closely see how this intricate situation progressively develops. If not, then we will have to resolve all the tasks before us by military means. I agree with those who believe that every country has the right to choose for itself the system for ensuring its own security. This applies to all countries, including Ukraine. But this also means that the security of one side cannot be ensured at the expense of the security of another country, in this case, the Russian Federation. We have always objected to Ukraine being a member of this North Atlantic bloc, but we have never questioned its right to conduct its economic and commercial activities as it wishes. This also applies to membership in the EU. Security guarantees are natural. I often talk about this. We proceed from the belief that every country should have these guarantees, a security system, including Ukraine. But this is not related to any exchanges, especially not to territorial exchanges. Frankly speaking, and I want to emphasize this, we are not fighting so much for territories as we are for human rights and the rights of the people living in these territories. To speak their own language, to live within their own culture and within the traditions passed down from previous generations, from their fathers, from their grandfathers, and so on. That is what this is primarily about. And if these people, through electoral democratic procedures, including referendums, have expressed their will to be part of the Russian Federation, this opinion must be respected. This is what democracy is. I want to remind those who tend to forget this. Besides everything else, this fully complies with international law. I also want to remind you of the very first articles of the United Nations Charter, which explicitly state the right of nations to self-determination. But we are not linking one with the other, territories and security guarantees. Of course, you could say these are related topics, right? But we are not directly linking them. And this issue was not raised during the discussion in Anchorage. As for possible meetings with Mr. Zelensky, I have already spoken about this. In general, I have never ruled out the possibility of such a meeting. Is there any point in these meetings? Look, let's take a look. So, according to the Constitution of Ukraine, some may agree with it, some may not. You just need to carefully read the text. There are no explicit provisions whatsoever in the current constitution of Ukraine for unilaterally extending the powers of the president of Ukraine beyond their established term. None at all. He was elected for 5 years. 5 years have passed. That's it. The term of office is over. There is a very important provision clearly stating that elections are absolutely not held under any circumstances whatsoever during a period of martial law. Yes, that is indeed entirely true and a fundamental principle. But that doesn't mean the president's powers are extended. This means that his powers expire and his rights are transferred to the Speaker of the Rada, including his powers as the Supreme Commander-in-Chief. So what should the current authorities do if they want to be legitimate and fully participate in the settlement processes? they must hold elections. I mean, not elections, sorry. First and foremost, they must hold a referendum according to the Constitution of Ukraine. Any questions regarding territories can only be decided by a referendum, well, as far as I remember. But a referendum cannot be held under martial law. This is also a constitutional provision of the Constitution itself. So in order to hold a referendum, martial law must be lifted, but as soon as that is done, elections must be held. And this process will go on endlessly. The outcome of the elections is unclear. But whatever that outcome may be after that, it is necessary to obtain the appropriate ruling from the Constitutional Court. That's what is written in the basic law. And how do you obtain a ruling from the Constitutional Court? If, after the authorities demanded that the Constitutional Court of Ukraine confirm the extension of the president's powers, the court essentially refused to do so. Do you know what they did in Ukraine? It's funny, but it's a fact. The security personnel abruptly stopped allowing the esteemed chairman of the Constitutional Court to enter his official workplace. That's precisely it. That's exactly where the dramatic movie of his career seemingly ended, but not entirely, because as far as I personally know, I'm not entirely sure where he is currently located now. But at one particular point in time, he definitively left the country. But in recent years, the terms of some members of the Constitutional Court have expired. It doesn't have a quorum to make decisions. So this is a road to nowhere. If you just, let's say, carefully hold meetings with the current head of the administration, you can. I've never refused to do that. If this particular meeting is indeed very well prepared and could potentially lead to some truly positive and beneficial results. By the way, Donald specifically asked me if it were at all possible to hold such an important and productive meeting. I responded, yes, it is absolutely possible and feasible. Well, in the end, if Zelensky is ready, let him come to Moscow. Such a meeting will take place.